This is perfect for the 49ers. After a veteran pass rusher was just released by his current team, the Niners have an opportunity to boost one of the weaker position groups on their team, as well as raise the ceiling of their defense right before the most important games of the season. We're going to break that all down for you on this episode of Niners Digest. My name is Ethan Galbraith. Make sure to subscribe to the channel because we noticed over 97% of you haven't subscribed yet. If you're a part of that 97%, make sure to subscribe. It's free, so you don't miss any Niners updates, because we're going to give you everything we got, including moves around the NFL today that might just impact Niners depth pieces. Let's start with the news, because just today, the Dolphins released veteran pass rusher Matt Judon. He appeared in 13 games for Miami and could be a potential option for playoff teams looking for a veteran presence on the defensive line. Now, when I saw this news happen, I immediately thought the Niners have got to go get him. You have to at least consider it. I think of it very similar to the Laken Tomlinson release a couple weeks ago and how I advocated that the Niners really should go get a guy like Tomlinson, because while he may not be an immediate, a necessary impact player because he's older in age and he might not just be that guy anymore, which Judon isn't. But it's important to remember that Judon is even in the conversation because of his midseason release, because of the type of player that he was in his prime. Let's look at his statistics here. Of course, a big drop-off from Judon this year with Miami, but if you look at his history with both the Ravens and especially the Patriots, he was a beast before just regression, getting older in age, and, just no longer in his prime. So the Niners signing Judon wouldn't be a save-all piece for the Niners defense, especially that defensive line, because as we've seen, especially in the most recent games, despite the win streak, the Niners defensive line and pass rush has not been that great. And Judon, of course, has not been that great in pass rush this year. He actually did not record a single sack this season, which is the only time in his career that he hasn't recorded a sack all season. So Judon is clearly not the player that he once was, but Judon is another depth piece, another body to put on that defensive line, because we know the Niners could use one. I'll talk about the depth chart and updates to that in a little bit, but I think an important thing, and while it may seem the opposite of what the Niners need right now, but Judon, despite not having recorded a sack, is a veteran presence that can really help the new guys that are in the building that are being asked to do more than they probably were originally expected to because of all the Niners injuries. Again, Nick Bosa is out all season. Michael Williams is out all season. So the Niners, of course, this graphic really stands out here because, again, Judon would ideally be brought in for better pass rush, and while he hasn't recorded a sack this season, it's another depth piece for the Niners that I think could be important, because look at this graph here. This is the number of sacks of every NFL team this year. Of course, you have some of the best defenses in football near the top, the Broncos, the Browns. And at the very bottom, below Myles Garrett, who is a single player, you have the Niners. The Niners are leagues behind every other team in terms of registered sacks this season. Even Myles Garrett, the one player on the Browns, has more sacks than the entire Niners team. And of course, there's a caveat here. The Niners have dealt with major injuries on that defensive line. You have arguably your two best pass rushers, two of your three best pass rushers in Nick Bosa and Michael Williams out for the season. Of course, Bryce Huff has been playing solid. Cleveland Farrell has really stepped up as a midseason acquisition. But the Niners clearly have an Achilles heel on their defense. And I think it's also not just the pass rush, but also the run defense. I talked about in my last video how the Titans' run game, despite being down by 21 points at one point in Sunday's matchup, kind of had their way in the run game. They rushed for over 6 yards a carry, and they kind of just got what they wanted against a Niners defense that their run defense starts with the defensive line. So I think that adding Matt Judon could be kind of a twofold bonus for the Niners defense. He is a depth piece for the Niners defensive line because, of course, you can never ask for too many depth pieces, especially at this point in the season. But I think he can also be a big player in the run game. It's another big body that the Niners can add right before an important stretch of the season, and the games are only going to get more important. And again, I want to emphasize the depth chart here. Yetur Gross-Matos' practice window, I want to start there. His practice window did get open last week, so it's expected that he should be playing either this coming Monday against the Indianapolis Colts or the week after versus the Bears. His return is inevitable. But again, Nick Bosa is not coming back. Michael Williams is not coming back. So there's a lot of questions around who's going to step up. And Cleveland Farrell has really stepped up. in other players' absence. Keon White has stepped up again, 2 midseason acquisitions. Now, that might set the standard a little high for potentially adding Matt Judon, but Matt Judon is a presence that I look at his addition to this defensive line, and I think of what he could do for Alfred Collins. I think of what he could do for CJ West. 2 rookies that Niners defense and Niners fans are really excited about. And they've had their ups and downs this season, but adding Matt Judon could be a veteran presence. I go back to, again, the Eric Kendricks addition to the practice squad a couple weeks ago. I was really excited, not just about his potential production if he was needed, because he still has it, but I think about what he could do for mentoring the rest of the linebackers. Nick Martin was the first one that came to mind. D. Winters as well. It's Winters' first season as a starter, full starter. So Matt Judon's presence in the locker room could be a similar thing. He's been a fan favorite everywhere he goes. So adding him to this defensive line, I think you wouldn't see his boosts through actual production. I think you would more so see it in what he can do and teach for the other guys in the locker room. So I think that's especially important. But the one thing that might prevent the Niners from actually making this move is the fact that the cavalry is coming back. The Niners are expected to get a lot of defensive players back this weekend, including key players on the defensive line. So the timing of this might not work because they're expected to get players back from injury. As I said, he's not mentioned on here, but Yetur Gross-Matos' practice window was just opened. He was coming off of IR. So you're getting some big players on that defensive line to come back. But I still don't see why you can't add Matt Judon, even if you add him to the practice squad, for example, because having him around, I think, is a net positive for the rest of the defensive line. A lot of these defensive linemen are young. They're new. They're in roles that they have not had before in the NFL, and they therefore have expectations placed on them that they really haven't had yet. So a guy like Matt Judon coming into the building, I think, could be a huge boost for just the morale and the vibes of the defensive line, because again, the games are only going to get tougher and the expectations and what's at stake is only going to get higher. So adding Matt Judon, I think, is a good signing. It could be a perfect signing, honestly, but I do understand why the Niners might hesitate and not end up pulling the trigger on this signing. But my final thoughts are this. I'll end with this because I got a laugh out of this one, because this is really the reality of the NFC West. Of course, the Seahawks are playing the Rams this Thursday for first place in the NFC West, and there are the Niners hanging around. Of course, the Cardinals are still in the division, but of course, they've kind of been pushed off to the side. They've fallen off, but the Niners still have a legitimate chance at the not just the NFC West title, but as a result, the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. That could be huge. That is going to be huge, especially because the road to the Super Bowl as the 1 seed would just be four straight home games. Sorry, it would be four home games theoretically, or 3 home games. Sorry, because you wouldn't play in the first round. My point is still the same. Adding a guy like Matt Judon for this home stretch, for this final push, because there's so much still at stake, is a great move, in my opinion. I think that adding a guy like Judon you don't do it for just production from Judon. You don't really want that. You shouldn't expect that from him. And I think that's what the bonus of adding him, because even though the Niners are injured, they have a lot of young talent that they still have that they can put in front of Judon, so they don't have to rely on his production or potential lack thereof. He could be there as a mentor. He could be there as a teacher for guys like Alfred Collins, for guys like CJ West, players that could learn a lot from a player who has been to the top, who has been one of the better pass rushers in the National Football League. So I think it's a great opportunity the Niners have. I think it would be a perfect signing, to be honest. But we'll wait and see how this all goes. We'll keep you updated on if the Niners pull the trigger on Judon, if they bring him on the practice squad or active roster, whatever that may be, or if he signs somewhere else and the Niners maybe make a different signing, because at this point in the season, it's going to come down to who's the healthiest, and the Niners are getting some players back, but I don't think that should be a reason why they shouldn't bring in another veteran player. But that's all for this episode of Niners Digest. Thank you again so much for watching. My name is Ethan Galbraith, and we will see you in the next video.